Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show. On this podcast, you'll learn from professional players, coaches, and executives from all over the world and see the court in a brand new way. And now, joining you courtside, your Gen Z host, John Hartophilus.
Beau, what's going on?
Oh, nothing much, John. It's good to be with you. Good to be at the start of an NBA season again. It's wild because it just happens so fast now, and these last three seasons sort of get bunched together. But this feels more normal, which is in a weird way, John, really, really exciting for me and for anybody who's a basketball fan anywhere. I just feel the momentum going into this season is really strong, coming off of great finals. So I'm ready for it. How about you?
More normal is exactly what we need. Just more of it and more of it and more of it. And we're getting that. Obviously, you said a great finals. Like this entire summer has been great. Capped off, obviously, with summer, with SBC and summer, which we'll definitely dive into. And I can't wait to jump into all of that. But the first thing I want to ask you about before we get into all that, and I really can't wait because, like, I think I told you when you first got on the call, I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I haven't spoken to Beau in a month and a half. Like, I was really excited. And I'm going to take your advice and slow down, get the little broadcaster voice going.
Just so you know, I'm grading you the whole time, John. I'm grading you the entire time. Just kidding. No, you're doing it. I'm so excited because it's like you said, we got to spend some time together this summer, but there has been a break, so it's great to catch up.
Definitely. It's awesome. I've definitely a really long pre-call before we got on the show. But I want to ask a little bit about maybe the early days of the GOATmentator, of Beau Estes. What did the origins of you falling in love with basketball come?
The origins are way before you were born, John. I lived out in California, in Southern California, and I was less than 10 years old at this time. But I remember very clearly, if you're in Southern California, then you're a Lakers fan. And a guy named Magic Johnson was a rookie on our Lakers basketball team. And he led them to the NBA championship. He switched from point guard to center on the road in Philadelphia. And there used to be this network called On TV. And they played sort of a music montage at the very end, and there's an old song that's like, "Do You Believe in Magic?" And it was that song over these shots of Magic Johnson. And ever since then, honest to God, it's never gone away. That love for basketball and that love, you know, what's weird is that it was really a love for the highlights of basketball, if you think about it, because they're putting together a montage of his best moments, and that love of highlights and that love of basketball really combined. And was less than 10 years old, and now all these years later, I'm still here doing basketball. And the thing that people know me for more than anything, you mentioned the GOATmentator, is it's basketball highlights. And honestly, it's weird because I think about, like, I tell people, I told my parents when I was 5 years old I wanted to be a sportscaster. I told them specifically, wow, I want to be a sportscaster. I remember it and they remember it. And I never ever diverted from that. I never moved an inch from that. High school guidance counselors, I didn't need them. College counselors, didn't need them. I knew exactly what I was going to do the whole way. So in a way, it's cool to live out your dreams. So very specifically, the other side of that is I'm living a 5-year-old's life. So there's a little bit of two ways to it, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm thrilled. So yeah, my love of basketball started in the 80s. We moved to North Carolina. I fell in love with a team called the Tar Heels then. James Worthy's been my favorite player my entire life. He led them to the 82 championship. They had a couple other good players on that team. Michael Jordan, you may have heard of. Sam Perkins was on that team. So yeah, I sort of lived highlights. Magic gets to LA, I'm there. Michael Jordan and James Worthy in North Carolina, I'm there. So I'm living the high points of basketball, and now I'm living highlights as my life too. So it's very, very lucky. I'm very thrilled, and I the key thing is I realize how fortunate I am, and I think that's important.
That is so incredible. I had no idea that you told your parents that at 5 years old. Like, I'd never heard you tell that story before. That is so incredible. Thinking about not just the fact that you've lived that dream throughout, but that you also were 6, 7, 8. I mean, what were you doing to get ready to be a broadcaster at that age?
You know what it was, is we were watching our football team was the Rams at that point in time. And I remember like there was a call that was so exciting, and the Rams went to the Super Bowl, I think it was 79 against the Steelers. And I remember telling my parents, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to do that. And, the reality is, like every kid, I would have loved to have been an NBA. I'm not tall enough to be an NBA player. Well, I'm tall enough. I actually am tall enough. I'm just not, I was never talented enough. I didn't have the talent. And so I was never disappointed because I always wanted to be a sportscaster. If I was talented enough to go to the NBA, I would have still been a sportscaster. And so no matter what, this was always the dream. And I just feel so lucky. I really do. And in a weird way, you talk to people who don't know what they want to do, and I feel terrible for that. But I also understand that that's more normal than what I did is completely abnormal. Telling your parents at 5, this is what I want to do, and then doing it, that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So it's a fun story. It's a lucky story, but it's also a dream come true.
Definitely. And you're helping so many people now, right, live out those dreams that maybe they didn't realize when they were 5 years old, but they're realizing it now. And you're helping a lot of them do that with a sports business classroom. So you mentioned how maybe you're not, like you weren't tall enough, maybe not that tall. You're definitely much taller now than you were when you were at Summer League about a month ago. I know that for sure. You're definitely a lot taller now. But even with that height, I mean, you have in your bio about getting blocked by Penny Hardaway. I've never heard you talk. If you can open up a little about that. I don't know if you have the highlight anywhere. We can put it over this video. Does it exist?
I do not have the highlight, and thankfully that's nowhere. Yeah. I have vivid memories of it. I have very vivid memories of it, as you might. But the thing was, Penny wasn't Penny then. He was Anthony Hardaway. He was a class below me. We were at a camp in Tennessee, and he's from Memphis. Really, all I remember is I was sort of a sports nerd while also playing basketball. So like I knew all the rosters of all the players at all the teams at camps, and our coach told us that this kid Hardaway was the best player at camp. So I just very specifically remember that. And then, you've played basketball just like me, and you've gone to those camps, I'm sure, where you don't have like a fancy locker. So they had us behind a curtain, and he has his like chalkboard up there. He's like, Beau, you're guarding Hardaway. And I'm like, so like a sports nerd, the whole time I'm obsessing about, oh, this guy Hardaway's great. And I would try to go catch his games and stuff like that. And I was just like, oh my God, I am finished. I'm going to get murdered by this guy. And so like, I remember so I don't remember it's the first play of the game, but my first memory is he was on me and I got the ball in the post and I did sort of like a head fake and he jumped, and I'm not kidding you. This image is crystal clear in my eyes. I remember his socks in my eyes, and I was like, oh my God. There was like a moment of like, you do the head fake and you're like, oh my God. And then, but like, he's so far gone that it was an easy little layup. And this is how much of a nerd I was. Like, I remember thinking, okay, I got that with the head fake. Next trip down, I'm going straight up. So I caught it in the high post at the elbow, just turned and shot. And it was like, a shadow just consumed my ball and just ate it. And I was almost like concussed. I was dazed by the moment. And I sort of turned around just in time to see their point guard throw an alley-oop to Penny, and he just hammered it home. And I was like, I remember thinking in that moment, like, oh, well, I'm never playing in the NBA because I can't, there's no chance. I think Penny was a freshman at that point, and he was killing everybody. It was something, man. It was really, and I remember, so we had this thing called Street and Smith's magazine back then, before the internet, and you could track every prospect in the world. And I remember going home that fall and getting that magazine and looking in the very back, and they had best prospects by class. And it was Anthony Hardaway, Memphis, Tennessee in there. Still wasn't Penny. I was just like, well, if you're going to get killed by somebody, get killed by that guy. It was something I'll never forget.
Well, so you said you will never forget it. I mean, do you remember what his sock game was like? Was it as good as yours is today, right now?
It wasn't a Gen Z hoop sock game. It was, I remember they were white. They were not ankle socks. They sort of, I can visualize it because they just passed me by like a train would pass by, like at eye level. And I just remember going, oh my God. But yeah, it was just white socks. And I don't even think they had stripes in them. I just think it was white socks.
Maybe he'll get his Gen Z hoop socks one day if he's lucky.
He needs a pair. Yeah, he needs a pair
for sure. But that's awesome thinking about experiences like that. You obviously always had in your mind, like you had said, about going into broadcasting at some point. When did it become a reality for you, where you actually were broadcasting and you did it all the time?
Oh man, I'll tell you the truth. When I got to the high school, first thing I did was join newspaper staff. Immediately, I wanted to be involved. And then I found out that there was this, I think it was Gwinnett Cable. So I grew up went to high school in a county called Gwinnett, which is this huge sports factory of a town, just loads of NFL players, NBA players, Lewis Williams, among others. There's probably 6-7 players from that county in the NBA right now. And so they were broadcasting games and they just needed students to do the games. So it was me and a buddy of mine named Chris King. Chris King is a lifelong friend of mine. He's still I think he's still doing like local high school football back in Georgia and everything like that. And we got in and we were doing these games, and it was like a tiny Radio Shack microphone and an old VHS camera on a tripod, and we would just like move it back and forth, the football for the camera for the football games, and then we would have to go deliver the tapes to the cable station after the game, and they would put it all together, and it would air probably one time, twice during the week on the cable station. And what I remember, we did some of that, and we did some radio in a station out in Gainesville, which is a remote suburb of Atlanta. And I remember thinking I'd made it to the big time when I got to the radio, because it wasn't free anymore. I was getting paid, and how I got paid was I got a free code to a car wash that was near my house. So I would go get my car washed 25 times a week. I basically peeled the paint off that car, getting my car washed all the time. But I was like, I'm going to get my money's worth out of this. Definitely. My first payment as a broadcaster was car wash codes.
That's an incredible way to put it. Something like that, like thinking about that being right, how you really got your start. In the words of someone, I would never say this, but in words of Marcus Thompson, it's pretty gangster, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I remember that was fantastic when Marcus said that. And, it's funny because now I think of Marcus and I'm never going to not think of, his advice to young journalists: be a gangster. And when you hear that as a headline, you're like, I don't know what that means. When you're in SBC and he explains it, you know what that means. You really do.
Definitely. We'd go into it here, but if for those that want to listen, sign up for next year and you might cap that. In that, right, you're growing so much as you kept on going along this journey. You had to find your voice at some point, right? When did you maybe find it? And we spoke about that a lot at SBC as well when Nate Duncan came and spoke to us. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I don't know. That's a great question, John. I know that I was always concerned with that. I know that I was always really, really concerned about my senior thesis in college was, how does a sportscaster inject their personality into their broadcast? Basically find their voice. And I thought about that a lot as a college student. This is a true story, John. The first time I ever did a stand-up was for a high school sports show in Atlanta on public broadcasting. I went and I wrote down the stand-up before I went out and did the shoot. And I read that in the mirror 500 times, and I had it down perfectly. And I got out there with the cameraman and I read it like, "Hi, I'm Beau, Estes," just like super fast and super robotic and everything I could say. And I nailed it. And I remember almost thought like it's a Jay-Z mic drop moment, like in your face, first take, baby, I'm Frank Sinatra, whatever. I just really thought I was the most incredible natural born sportscaster ever. And because I've been since 5, I've been preparing for this moment. And the cameraman looks at me and goes, "Sure you don't want to try that again?" And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Why don't you slow down and just explain it and everything like that to people?" And I was like, okay. And I stumbled after that. But eventually that process of breaking me down and then eventually building me back up made me better. I don't think I was really, I'm not saying I'm like a great sportscaster now, but I don't think I was really good, until 10 years of doing it, honestly. Until you really, I had a producer. I was lucky enough to be an anchor at Fox Sports Southeast, like one of the regional sports networks where we watch like Hawks games and stuff like that. And the producer there, the executive producer, told me, "You're sort of traveling between being cocky and being confident. And there is a difference in that. The confidence is knowing you can do it. The cocky is, I'm sure I'll be able to do this." And so confidence is better. And I sort of became confident in that process and hosting a bunch of shows and learning. But it's a learning process, man. It's a job. It's a hard work sort of endeavor. And I just think I still get better today. I hope. I hope it's never ending. I mean, I hope the day I retire is a day I learn something still that day. So, obviously I've reached a certain level of competency, or they wouldn't put me on NBA TV. They wouldn't have put me on Fox Sports Southeast. They wouldn't have put me on TBS. They wouldn't put me on NBA.com. You've got to be somewhat good to do that. But I hope I'm still getting better. I really do.
Definitely getting a little bit better every single day. And a big part of that is keeping those relationships and being able to slow down, like you had told me, right? Slow down, but in slowing down, listening more, which is something I've been trying to do a lot for this show, is really listening to what you're saying. And that's why I love you're teaching me so much about yourself that I didn't really know. And we spent so much time together in Vegas, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. What's funny is, like, I think that the teacher-student relationship is really cool, but I also think it's useful for you guys to all know that I was on the other side of that, right? And that I had to grow, and that every lesson that I get, one of the things I do is probably color my instruction with stories of things that I've done wrong in the past, or moments I've learned, to share with you guys, to hopefully you guys can get there quicker. And so I think that it's important for you guys to know, man, it's a process. It really is. And it's a learning, it's an entire journey. And so for all the students at SBC, that especially those in our media and broadcast program, I want to take the time to make sure, whatever field they're in, because I've had some success as a writer, I've had some success as a broadcaster, and so wherever it is you want to go, I want to really take the time to invest in you and hopefully see you get better, because that's the whole point. As long as you're getting better, we're doing the right things.
And definitely, that's even happened in the first month of us leaving SBC. So before we go any further, I just wanted to ask you, where have you maybe seen that, maybe whether it's in students past that have come back and taught, like someone like Simon, who's such a huge mentor to me, for example. And then even just, there was only 8 of us. We had a really tight group. We all got to really know each other really well. People starting new initiatives only a month after leaving SBC.
Yeah, no, I think the thing is you guys are ahead of me for sure. So there's more opportunities for all of you. Look, you've got your own show right now, and you get the chance to improve. You sound better now than you sounded 3 months ago, but it's because you're getting reps, and reps are the key. Absolutely the key. The more you get to do this, the more comfortable where you are. There's probably a lesson you had from 8 episodes ago that as you're doing a show, you can think of and remember that, and okay, here's a way I can do it better. So I see it in so many of our students. You mentioned Simon. Simon was a student at Sports Business Classroom. He's an expert now. He's legitimately an expert. Simon is a guy who is running the single biggest social media account for basketball on planet Earth. The biggest. Anybody else who's running a social media account for a basketball that's not what Simon's running is smaller than Simon. So, Simon is the king of that right now. And so we were so fortunate to have him come back and explain that aspect and that level of expertise and competence that he has. Look, whenever it comes to social, I turn to Simon. He doesn't turn to me. I turn to Simon. He's become an expert in that. And that's an area of growth for him. That's been an effort for him. And I remember when he got the job, we were so excited for Simon. And I just, you see people, the thing to me that's the most rewarding, John, is seeing people get jobs. We're all about jobs at SBC, and Larry Kuhn's our leader. And, he says that directive. Albert Hall sends that directive. We want to get people jobs. Because once you get in and you start to see what it's like from the inside looking out rather than the outside looking in, it's a whole different perspective. I think it changes your work in this way. I think it makes you more directed. I think you understand what it's important to work on and what is peripheral noise that you don't need to focus on. So all of that excites me, and to see those specific cases of people growing. It's funny because at this point in my career, that means more to me than me ripping off a good rhyme in a top 10. I still love that, but it's great to see you guys develop. That actually means more to me.
And there's so much development going on there. There's so much skill set acquisition happening at Summer League and at SBC. There were so many different ways for us to do that. And I'm actually, I hope Larry Kuhn covers his ears for this part of it, but I was very thankful that I switched over to media and broadcasting and got to spend that time with you and Simon learning with you guys. So Larry, if you're,
I'll be sure he fast forwards right through this portion, John.
Thank you. Make sure he does that, because obviously every part of SBC was great, and I loved all parts of it. But definitely thankful I got to take that opportunity with you guys. And I don't think I ever got to tell you this. You really made my day. I think it was like 2 weeks before Summer League when you tweeted out about me coming over to media and broadcasting. And this is like before I knew you, before I ever spoken to you. And I got that little mini shut. I'm like, wait, they know me before I'm getting this. This is so cool. That meant a lot.
It's weird. I think the one thing, look, I'm going to sound like I'm giving you a sales pitch, and I don't want it to come across that way. I just want people to understand that there is a personal investment in our SBC students before we start SBC, during SBC, certainly, and after SBC. You know, Larry said it, your success is our success. We're at the point in our careers now where we don't need somebody to tell us we've made it or anything like that. We understand what we've done with our careers. So now our success is you guys, and we're thrilled to see it.
Means so much to know that, and obviously, right, it's so evident just with how the week went that's entirely true. What went into you planning it? Like because we did so much, right? Pre-game, post-game.
How long do you have, John?
I also didn't fit. We have pre-game, we have post-game, we have Sean was producing games, right? He was producing those post-games for the Ringer was coming in, like just impromptu. They would come in, he'd produce it. We did the ESPN broadcast when you brought me in to just watch that. Like, what was the preparation like for that?
Well, there's a couple of things involved there. One, I'm lucky enough to have developed some good relationships at this point in my career. So, you know, you talk about visiting and sitting in on an ESPN game pre-production meeting. That producer is a guy named Greg Pike, who I've been friends with since my early 20s. We're not in our early 20s anymore. So yeah, Greg has had just a wildly successful career. He's a former producer of Inside the NBA, and he helps run ESPN's Orlando operation. So this is a call to Greg and saying, look, we've got some students who are really interested. Can we just sit on the sidelines and sort of take you guys in? And we're lucky because in that meeting's a guy like Jared Greenberg, who's just been wonderful with SBC throughout, not just during your experience, during our virtual experience in 2020 and before. Jared's been wonderful. So I think, you know, you get to talk to Jared, you get to talk to Sam Mitchell's in there, who is behind the scenes. Sam Mitchell is the most entertaining guy in NBA history. Behind the scenes, Sam Mitchell takes the Charles Barkley crown. Is unbelievable, Sam Mitchell in a meeting. But to get to experience that is because of those prior relationships. So I think, you know, that's a part of it, making those relationships and understanding who to call. And then the more I do this, the more I understand what's a valuable experience for you guys and what's sort of like fantasy camp. And we want to do less fantasy camp and more impactful, valuable experience. Now, look, getting to meet somebody, you know, like a former NBA player, that's cool. It really is. But you getting to be up there on a set in a real setting, doing a show about a basketball game that you just watched at Summer League is, to me, more useful so that you understand what that feeling is, what those cameras are like, what that Q&A is like, what hearing that in your ears like, what all that is, I think is more valuable. We plan with that in mind. We prioritize the valuable experience for you. And this all comes from Larry Coons. So I think Larry Coons planning for these things is legendary. In a normal year where we do SBC in July, we start meeting weekly in maybe mid to late January. An hour a week. We're meeting an hour a week. And so okay, what have we done this week? And we fill them in. And then what we have is this large grid, and we start filling in instructors and then times. And that it's almost like a programming director for a network. Like you're trying to figure out which shows fit where. We're trying to figure out which instructors fit where. And, you know, and their schedules as well matter because we're getting really highly skilled professionals who are busy during Summer League. So we try to work around their schedules. So all that stuff matters. It's a lot of work, unbelievable amount of work, but it's when we get there and you've done the work ahead of time, it's a lot better feeling than if you showed up and said, hey, let me just go round up some of my friends and see if they could talk to the students. That's never going to work. It's never be how we do it.
Definitely a lot of preparation, but what's crazy is that even with that kind of, I just bumped into whoever it is in the hallway and they come in, like a lot of those happen too. And that was a lot of fun at the same time.
Yeah, no, we try to do that too. We try to do pop-ins. I remember in 2019, I'm buddies with Dennis Scott, and he was just walking down the hall, and I was like, hey, you want to come in and talk to our SBC students? He came in and talked for 10 minutes. At our opening in 2019, I saw Kenny Smith. I've worked with Kenny since the 90s. Kenny's son, KJ, has already finished a career at North Carolina playing as a basketball player. I remember Kenny as like a 5-year-old walking around the halls at TNT. So I've known Kenny forever. Kenny came in and spoke to our huge group. So, you know, those relationships and those experiences are really cool too, I think. And again, it's balancing that out. It's balancing out the educational opportunity with this is really cool moment. And the thing is, I think it's important to know when we bring in a Kenny Smith or a Dennis Scott, they're successful for a reason. Obviously they were successful players, but there's a lot of successful players that aren't doing what they're doing. So they can give you some insight as to why they're successful as well. And so we feel that's meaningful too.
super meaningful. And you touched on it so many times, whether it's the people that are coming in or the experiences. I mean, for me personally, I would always see on ESPN, I'd see them go, okay, our producers are telling us this. And I'd say, oh, how does that happen? And then I'm actually hearing Sean in my ear telling me what to do. The first, second time, I kind of got tripped up. He's in my ear and I forgot what I was about to say, completely threw me off. By the third or fourth time, it was easy. I knew exactly.
You know what it is? It's if you ever listen to somebody who's talked about learning to play drums, you got your hands are doing one thing and your foot is on a completely different timing. So my outward presentation is doing one thing, but I'm hearing something in my ear that's directing me for what's next. And it's learning that skill set of, okay, this is going on out here, but I still have to ingest what the producer is telling me because that's my next notes coming up in the piece. And that's a skill. It's a skill that takes time. It's a skill, I think like Ernie Johnson's unbelievable. He's the best I've ever seen at it, but there are some people that are just incredible at it, but it's a skill that takes time. And just like I told you, reps, all that stuff's something to develop. But you're right. That first time you hear that, well, no, that's something. Because I imagine you were like, this is a bit different, right?
I just didn't know. I mean, I was like, wait, that's Sean. It was my first day maybe meeting Sean. Didn't really know him too well. So I'm like, who's in my ear right now? It was kind of weird. And then obviously play-by-play was a whole different beast. I always thought I'd be good at it. I thought it'd be naturally, oh, wow. I've done this. I've done 250 episodes of the show at this point. I've done all this talking. I'll be fine on the play-by-play mic. And obviously, right, you're the first time doing it. I'm like, wait, what number is he?
You're chasing, right? You're chasing. My God.
Yeah.
You're chasing the details. Okay. He got it. He made the basket. It was passed to him by this guy. So if I want to credit, I need to look at my roster. I need to make sure I know all this. And then by then you're at the other end and there's a dunk that's happened on the other end. So you're chasing that. And that's also a skill, man. It's just like playing an instrument. It's another skill.
It was awesome acquiring those skills over and over again and doing that. I do want to ask you, we've spoken so much about all these different times. This summer league, this year, what was your favorite part of it? That's a tough one. But
wow, that's really good. So it's going to be an SBC thing. It's not going to be basketball because I'm too busy to deal with basketball. I'll tell you what my favorite part of it is the way that studio operation came together and the way that you guys performed up there during that studio operation with Sean taking the reins on producing and the way that you guys handled your on-camera presence and delivered the end product like that really, really pleased me. It's one of those things where I wish I could sort of make clones of myself so I could be at the play-by-play station, so I could be at the studio, so I could be in with the writers all at the same time. But seeing that studio come together in the way that it did, it's a huge thanks to the guys at Hall Pass, guys like Max and Tucker and those guys that put that thing together, because I just think, man, what an opportunity. You're in an NBA arena, you're watching NBA games, you've got fans walking by, the lights are on you. This is the way it is, man. This is the chance to get to feel that energy. It just really, really was a chance for you guys to shine, and I love seeing that.
That studio changed everything. It really was what made Summer League so impactful, just being there and feeling that, like, you're 100% right, because there's nowhere else to get that. And that was a new addition this year. What's some things you're excited for next year? Not to give too much away. What are you really hopeful for Summer League 2022?
Well, yeah, no, I think the first thing is that it'll be more, we started this whole thing talking about normal. We'll be able to plan for a normal, this one ended up being very normal, but to be able to go from the outset and know, okay, the normal amount of people are coming, the normal amount of experts are coming. And then the other thing I'll be excited about is the amount of people that are coming back year after year, the fact that we have graduates that are now successful, that are coming back and taking a part in the program. I'll be excited to see who's back with us next year, who's working with us, who's there as an SBC representative and where their careers are. I'd love to spend just a day catching up with people. Obviously, you've seen me. I'm running around with it like a chicken with my head cut off out there. But I'd love to spend time talking to people and seeing where they are and seeing how their careers develop. So I'll be excited to see that. The other side of it is on the court. I'm always excited to see the number 1 draft pick play, the number 2. Look, the main excitement for me was the number 2 draft pick this time going in there, Jalen Green. And I was killing you guys with that all week, I think. But yeah, I'll be excited to see those players. Those players, look, we cover all this because we love basketball. And it's those players on the court. There's a lot of peripheral stuff that goes on. But if those players aren't making those heroic, mind-boggling plays on the court, we're not here. So I'll be excited to see that too.
I do want to add, you just made me remember one funny moment of Summer League was we were 3 seconds from starting our show, our post-game show for a completely unrelated game. But the Pistons and Rockets are playing in TNM. And you came up, it's like Sean's went 3, 2, and you go, Jalen Green's outscoring Cade Cunningham, and then walked away. And then went to like do something else. You were like, Jalen Green, you just wanted to make sure we knew that. So we had that information for the show.
You know what? I'll give you a little background on this. I was working for Albert Hall as a play-by-play announcer when Jalen Green was a sophomore, and Albert told me, keep your eye on this kid, Jalen Green. And I have ever since. So I've obviously just been happy to see his success. And that's sort of like half a joke the way I was treating that all week. That is funny that I did that because that just, yeah, I can see myself seeing that, running over, saying that to you guys, laughing as I walk away, and then going on to the next thing. That's funny that you guys remembered that, though.
I remember that vividly. And there was no way I want to end and finish this podcast instead of, bringing up you said a lot of those jokes that you have. But this one, I think you seriously are very passionate about it in terms of the GOAT debate. And you can take this whatever way. I'm just going to ask you who the GOAT is. I know you're into soccer, too, and you have the whole Messi, Ronaldo thing. But mostly, you know where I'm taking this in terms of LeBron versus Jordan and where you go with it.
First of all, I hate that the word debate is in there. There is no debate. It's Michael Jordan. There is nobody. I advocate for removing Michael Jordan from the debate and just debating everybody else to see who's on the silver medal stand. I'm much more interested in that debate. I tell everybody that one of the things I treasure in life is in November of 2020, I got to sit for an hour and a half with a good friend of mine, Sekou Smith, who we sadly lost during this pandemic. And we got to talk basketball and everything else. And at the very end of that episode, if you go listen, Sekou explains why Jordan is the GOAT for him. I will leave the last word on that to Sekou Smith. Again, it's not even a debate to me. It's ridiculous to even call it a debate. The other thing that I will say, though, for a person your age, there's a part of me that if I was your age, I'd be like, shut up, old man, because like LeBron's the best player you guys have ever seen. So why are you going to sit there and say he's not the greatest ever? It would almost be annoying. Like, why am I watching this sport if I'm not watching for the greatest? But if you lived through Jordan and if you saw Jordan and if you saw, there has never been a player so thoroughly dominate every other professional contemporary at his time like Michael Jordan did. He destroyed everyone. LeBron, to an extent, has done that off and on. And LeBron's argument, if you ever want to call it one, is the amount of time this guy has played and been healthy and been at the top of the game is unbelievable. But he has never, to me, dominated the rest of the competition in anything remotely like the way that Michael Jordan did. And that's the sad thing is I've loved LeBron since he was a sophomore in high school, and I told everybody, and I still do. So I hate that it comes across as negative to LeBron because he's certainly the best player of this century. He's the best player of this generation. But if you put him in the harsh light that is comparison to Michael Jordan, it ain't there. It ain't there, man.
I love the passion that you have for this. It's funny, when my flight got delayed out of Wichita and I was stuck in Chicago, I was upset for about 5 minutes until I realized, wait a minute, I get to go see the Jordan statue. This is gonna be pretty cool. So I went over there and I was like, I had the tweet ready. It was all, I just had to put the picture inside. So I had the tweet ready already. You're infamous, for those who don't know. It always goes back to MJ always. I had that ready. I went, got the picture, posted it immediately. I had it all ready because I was so excited to do that. And I knew it was all pre-planned.
It's funny because that just started off as a silly thing. And in some ways, it still is a silly thing to me because, look, the all-time rebound record doesn't go back to Jordan or something like that. But, like, it is amazing how often it does go back to this one dude. You know, I hope that people understand in me saying that Michael Jordan's not my favorite basketball player of all time. It's James Worthy. There's no doubt about it. It's James Worthy. Beau, you could meet Michael Jordan or James Worthy and have lunch with them. James Worthy 100 out of 100 times. I know who the best is. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind who the best is. So I just think, you know, I hope I never lose that passion for basketball and for talking about basketball. But I know at this point I haven't. I know that much.
If anyone listens to this show, they're gonna know if you live for another 100 years, you'll still have the same passion for the ball. I don't see that going anywhere, and I'm excited to whether it's next year at Summer League, whenever I see you again, to further live that passion out. And I really can't wait for that. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was awesome.
Oh, it's my pleasure, John. And I hope you'll invite me on again in a year so I can see where you're going and where your career is going. Obviously, I'll be following you and sending you critiques in email and everything else like that. But my hope is that you have more success than I ever had. And I really mean that. I mean that for every SBC student. I wish you guys nothing but success. And it's your hard work. It's stuff like this that you put together on your own. And this show, believe me, it's not just me saying this to you on the air. We talk about this behind the scenes. People know that you've got this show going, and people know that it's going places and you're going places. So I'm really happy for you, man. And I just congratulate you on all your success.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.